Hello there. It's time for Most Things Kenobi.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Most Things Kenobi, a podcast about Obi-Wan Kenobi and all things Star Wars. I am your host, Leanne.
And I'm your host, Lauren. This week, we are going to discuss something a little different than we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about this kind of subject yet. We're going to delve into Obi-Wan Kenobi's costume. We're going to talk about costumes today. It's kind of fun.
Yes, and how I have questions, as I always do, but they're questions I've always wanted to ask. And you've already written, and you've done extensive research on this and posted it on the Most Things Kenobi Tumblr a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. It's still one of my most popular posts, which is really funny, but...
Well, you raised a lot of good points, and I think some of the questions I had were answered in your post. But it's interesting to delve into, because, you know, costume inspiration comes from somewhere, right? And whether it's by accident or if it's pulled from pieces of history, it seems to be both of these things in this case. And none of it seems practical.
Yeah, a little column A. None of it seems practical.
No, not an ounce of it seems practical for a Jedi. A Jedi in his prime, we'll say, as Obi-Wan were. So,
yeah, it's a really, I love costumes, and the Jedi costume in particular is like, it's very fascinating to me because it pulls from, I would say it mostly pulls from Japanese, like traditional samurai. But there are elements of it that are like a knight, like a medieval knight. And, you know, whether or not that was intentional or if it's just because it's very common for warriors in history to wear these kind of layers, maybe that's where, you know, the overlap comes in. I don't know if that was intentional to be like medieval and feudal Japanese. I'm not even sure. I guess, well, the samurai have existed for a very, very long
and they
time.
are
Well before... They existed well before knights existed.
And they're amazingly badass. So it would work.
They are.
It would work in that sense. But there's a lot of other samurai-inspired costume pieces, such as Darth Vader's helmet comes from pieces of that day and age, that era.
And Rex and Cody, their armor in particular.
Shoulder pieces.
Yes, Rex has the thigh armor, the thigh panels that you see in samurai armor, which is intended to like create like a glancing blow, basically, and protect you on horseback. But Cody has a shoulder fin, and that design comes from like the samurai would protect the carotid arteries, basically the arteries of their neck, and you would have this fin that comes up next to the side of your head, or your helmet might slope down all the way to your shoulders to make it harder for someone to
and it makes
kill
sense.
you.
It makes sense. Maybe not for clone troopers because they were using blasters, but it's a nice nod. It
is. It's just badass looking. It just looks fucking awesome.
Since we do have people out there who aren't as into Star Wars, they listen to us because they like us, which thank you.
Which is it's very touching.
But for those of you who aren't, you know, as steeped in Star Wars, the realm that is the giant galaxy of Star Wars, if you will.
Yeah.
The Jedi tunics, robes, etc., giant billowy sleeves that we're talking about. Hopefully I've painted a picture. It's many layers of V-neck tunics almost, a giant belt, several belts, and long capes, billowy sleeves, and a lot of things that would seem to get in the way of lightsaber combat, which is what we're going to discuss.
Right. And knee-high Chanel boots.
Knee-high Chanel boots, yes. It would not be, we cannot talk about these costumes if we don't bring up the Chanel boots. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Forgot about the Chanel boots.
Well,
I love it.
They're so stylish. So we're going to mostly focus on Obi-Wan, just because there are so many Jedis and so many iterations of the Jedi robe. And they could all be taken in their own context. I'm sure each one has been designed specifically to match the personality of that Jedi. But I want to have this conversation because it's one of my most popular posts on Tumblr. And the original question was somebody had noticed that Obi-Wan's costume changes a little bit in each episode. And they're asking if they were asking if I thought that was kind of intentional or if I have any theories about why the costume changes. And of course, I do have theories.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question. Do you have theories? Which I know you do.
I do.
know you do.
I mean, costumes are intentional. There's not going to be a thing in a movie that was an accident.
Unless we're talking about the bathrobe in A New Hope, right?
Yes.
which the bathrobe looking...
It's a real bathrobe. Like, it's legit.
Yeah. So
Uncle Owen wears a terry cloth bathrobe. You can see it in a picture.
Listen, he's not going anywhere on Tatooine. Where's he going? Nowhere.
He's just wearing his bathrobe as a jacket.
That's all. Shit.
It's definitely like one of those giant bathrobes you get in a hotel.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I love it. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, that's kind of interesting that you say that, because the truth is, when you look at A New Hope and you look at everybody on Tatooine, at least Luke and Uncle Owen and Obi-Wan, they're all dressed really similarly. And then all of a sudden, in the prequels, the Jedi are wearing Uncle Owen's brown,
truth,
turtleneck and bathrobes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you could say that the Jedi robes were planned that way all the way back in the 70s. Who's to say? I think that was more of like, this is how people dress in the desert because it's practical and it's protects you from the elements and the sun. Yeah. But they're still based on samurai clothes, traditional samurai clothes. So like what Luke is wearing in A New Hope is... I'm going to look it up and see if I can pronounce it correctly. Okay, so on Tatooine, Luke is wearing what is called a shiitake. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this correctly, so please forgive me, anyone who speaks Japanese and knows how to pronounce these words. I should have researched pronunciation ahead of time, but I didn't. But it's like the waist-length crossed tunic that you see. And it can have like short sleeves or long sleeves, and that's basically what you see Luke wearing on Tatooine. The white tunic, that he's wearing with his little white trousers and his knee-high boots.
In A New Hope. Not Return of the Jedi.
In A New Hope, yeah.
Return of the Jedi is the black. It's also short.
It is also short, so you have the base layer, which is the same. It's just a different color. He has a different collar on, which I'm going to forget what it's called now. Oh my God, it's that Western collar that like cowboys wore.
Oh,
a cavalry, I think.
Priests also have a collar like that.
That's true, and
except
they have.
It's covered with it's connected by a little ribbon.
Well, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but Luke's neckline is more like a cavalry neckline that you see in like cowboy movies, like the Old West would have that, and it falls open, to the side, which you see in Return of the Jedi, the little white panel inside. So. But that's still based on the samurai tunic and tabard and like inner tunic, outer tunic, which you see a lot in Obi-Wan's costumes.
Yes, but I think that the changes occur, I think, most dramatically between Phantom Menace all the way to what we see, all the way through the Clone Wars to Revenge of the Sith. I mean, minus the more practical armor that Filoni threw in, which we can talk about, but...
yeah. Thank God.
He gets it. Filoni gets it.
He does.
But at times during the Clone Wars, they would go out to fight, and Obi-Wan would not have the white shoulder plates and the vambraces on. And I always wondered why sometimes he didn't wear it, and most of the time he did. But I wonder, like... Was that on purpose? Was it supposed to be more casual?
I think Obi-Wan always has van braces, except I think in season 7. So by then he's in his Revenge of the Sith. So he becomes less and less armor covered, which I think has more to do with like animation, because they said it was very hard to render fabric.
No doubt.
So it's easier to begin with to have them in like a hard armor, and by the end they obviously have amazing animation capabilities, and they can do the flowy, billowy sleeves that make no goddamn sense. The thing that I noticed looking at the prequels is that in Phantom Menace, his tunic is very loose. Like, you actually see his chest. It's not, like, even touching his neck. It's all very
He's
open.
not the wound up, too tight, too strict Obi-Wan that we come to know later on.
Exactly.
Is it a purposeful reflection of this, or was it... I mean, was it tied to his status? Because he hadn't been knighted yet.
Sure, could be. It definitely could be. I mean, to me, it seems more like, and this is speculation. Sure. Obviously, I don't have this right from the horse's mouth or anything, but it seems to me that the further into the prequels we get, and the more austere he is, it's like he is really devoted, all the while kind of being forced to do things that he thinks maybe aren't quite right, especially by Return of the Jedi, when he's asking Anakin to do things that kind of are dubious and not very moral. The more he's like trying to hold the line, the less he feels he can, and the more his collar goes up higher on his neck. Yeah. And he's like, by Revenge of the Sith, he's wearing so many layers, and they're like climbing up his neck. It just looks suffocating to me.
A symbolism of how the Jedi Code and the Jedi Council was suffocating him, was stifling him.
Yes.
So it could be a symbol.
What it seems.
I look for symbols and things. You know what I mean? And I'll take it, even if it's a stretch. But
I mean, he's really bound up. He's bound up, and he's under vestments, and it could be that it's a symbol of his responsibility. Maybe he's not suffocated. Maybe he's just carrying a heavier burden as a master and with more responsibility. But either way, he looks like a knight of stature, like a man of stature, a man of responsibility, holding a place of respect on the council. And with that comes burden and restriction and responsibility. Yes. So I think that is a purposeful choice in his costume.
So. It also... another purposeful thing, as we all know, Anakin's robes were much darker. It was a contrast of light versus dark, and kind of the gradual, easy segue into the black that he ended up having to wear. But Obi-Wan still has light-colored robes and layers and things, and keeps that. I mean, it's much lighter than a lot of the other Jedi who wear kind of the brown
mixture.
Yeah,
except in Revenge of the Sith, his inner tunic is dark.
Is dark brown, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's still like an earth tone. It's still like a natural earth tone. So I think that keeps him, like, it's a sign that he's definitely still Obi-Wan, but there's probably a lot more internal conflict, especially with, what happens with Anakin at the end. So
what fascinates me is they're also, the Jedi are closely compared to like Buddhist monks, right? Who wear the giant sleeves because they're sitting and they're covered and that's what they wear, and it's supposed to be simplistic and watered down, if you will, keep everything simple. But these were fighters. These were soldiers, and they still had to move, and that's why the giant sleeve thing annoys the shit out of me, because maybe men aren't aware of this, but if you've ever worn a billowy sleeve as a female and you reach for something across the table, that sleeve is going in the sauce. I don't care.
It goes right in.
And you have to hold it. Now picture yourself holding a sword of any kind, let alone an electric one. A mystical electric, one that will cauterize
Plasma.
On sight. It just seems impractical,
Well, it's funny to me because it's based on samurai who were
Lethal.
but they were also, centered and balanced, just like
Yes.
the Jedi. And
Yeah.
obviously they take a lot of that culture into Star Wars. But the samurai wore, they bound their wrists. They bound their, I don't know if they wore vambraces. I think they might have. But either way, they would use leather straps to like bind their wrists so that their sleeves would not get in the way. And I mean, they even wore terracotta breastplates, like very heavy stuff. They didn't just walk in wearing fabric.
Right.
And it was part of their status, and it was part of their, it's just common sense. Who the hell goes into battle with that protection?
Well, thankfully, we were given that in the animated Clone Wars series where, okay, they strapped those sleeves in a little bit, and we got some shoulder plating and chest plating and the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I can't imagine fighting with the sleeves just flopping around like that. But maybe...
Well, and I'm sure the argument is that they're peacekeepers.
That's true.
They're not supposed to fight.
Go on the defensive, right?
So they don't walk in ready to fight.
But they were in a damn war.
Still.
I mean, the war was there, and they went to it. They sought it out. They sought out battles.
And God bless the Clone Wars designers for
Thank
adding
you.
vambraces to
Jesus.
their soldiers. Thank you.
I mean, Ahsoka had vambraces, but she also had a much different outfit. Because
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I mean, she was never knighted. You could say that, she skipped that whole part, but I don't even see if she was knighted, if she'd wear it. She had a cloak on at times, but mostly that was for when she was trying to hide. These guys wear their cloaks like on the high council, and I would assume it's just part of the it's part of the thing. But
That would be so hot. I would just be sweating all the time.
well, we know the Obi-Wan Kenobi famous hood pullback reveal thing, which
and the cloak drop.
and the cloak drop, like all the drama of it all, which I love. But
Well, you've got your inner tunic. You've got an outer tunic. You've got what's it called, Leah?
the tabard.
Tabard.
Tabard?
The tabard.
Tabard?
Thank you.
Okay.
You got the tabard. Then you got the belt, the layered belt. Then you have the circus tent of a cape that you have to wear
circus
with
tent.
sleeves that are literally 52 miles long.
Seriously.
Like, knee-high leather boots. I would be drenched in sweat.
Yes.
There is no way I could not be.
But they didn't sweat. They glistened.
No. They glistened.
Sorry.
They're not Twilight vampires.
They sparkled.
Oh, God,
I know,
help me.
sorry. Twilight. Still a better love story than Twilight. Satine and Obi-Wan. Still a better love story than Twilight. Am I right?
Totally agree with that. Even in the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Well, also, like, why is Obi-Wan wearing the same stuff, basically, in A New Hope? Could the man have not gotten any new clothes? Like, he's still got the dark brown underlayer. He's still got the same, like, tan. Like, for God's sakes.
Did Tatooine have laundromats?
I sure hope so. I hope that was washed.
I am not giving this uniform up. No.
Like, okay,
I think
so a man dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi, going by Ben Kenobi, which is really top secret,
Yes.
is now,
Yes.
like, it's obvious who he is.
Right.
Change your clothes, change your whole name. What the fuck?
The sun baked his brain, I'm telling you. The sun baked his brain, and Yoda went nuts with the snakes. We've covered this. Living in isolation does things to you.
Oh my God, it's so
I once
true.
lived in northern Maine, and that was as isolated as I've ever been, and it did things to my brain, so...
Yeah, I've been alone for an extended period too, and I realize I talk to myself a lot when I'm alone.
Yeah.
When I start talking to myself, that's when I'm like, I need to be around some other humans.
Well, I talk to my
alone
cat.
far
My
too
cat
long.
talks back, so I'm not sure if that's...
That counts.
Does it count?
I think that counts.
Okay, that's great.
I say it counts.
I said that and he meowed from across the room. No shit. Aw.
See, you guys talk to each other.
He's technically our third co-host, so
yeah.
he's everywhere we are at all times.
He can't be without you. Also,
Can we talk about the belt?
I was... Oh my God. I was
Space Twin?
literally,
Space Twin?
yes, just gonna say that.
Because I find the belt, the most practical piece of their uniform,
Yeah.
and historically, the name of it is Obi.
I know.
What is that? Like,
I know. I was like, is that on purpose that he's named after a belt?
we're talking about the cloth piece underneath their
Yeah.
leather, like, tool belt.
The
if
belt
you will.
used to close the tunic and hold the
Yeah.
tabard in place is called an obi, which I
I
just...
love that.
It's amazing.
It has to be a coincidence, right? Because I mean that the Obi came first, but did
Maybe. I don't know. Knowing George Lucas, it wasn't an accident, but...
maybe he knew it was part of the uniform and then he thought that would be a good name for a Jedi. Let's
Yeah, but where's the wand come from?
no.
We need to write George Lucas a letter.
Hang on. Hang on.
Well, because Vader is the word for father, I guess, in German. And so that was like an on-purpose choice.
Well,
but
the Korean word for money is won. W-O-N. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Are we? Have we?
I think we're...
Have we jumped the shark with this one?
Yeah.
We like to.
Sorry, Fonzie, but we're
Shit.
done.
Anyway, the belt. You were probably going to say something much more educated than me
No,
going
I
on
was just
about.
going to say that it's... No, just going to say that it's called an obi, exactly what you were going to say, of course, because we have the same brain.
I think it makes more sense because I don't want all that leather rubbing against me. So it's nice that they had at least an extra layer. I know it's part of like the samurai, uniform, if you will. But it also protected them from the damn rubbing of the leather because if they're sweating underneath all this stuff, the last thing you want is leather rubbing against you, Which I think they're covered because they have enough layers to last them a lifetime. Can you imagine how they smelled?
Hopefully good. I'm just going to pretend that they smelled good.
Walking through the halls of the Jedi Temple, I bet you they all smelled like roses, but...
They smelled like leather and sandalwood.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's cool because they're like upper half and their cloak is very samurai inspired. Minus the armor. Don't use that as much, but you can see it on the clones, definitely. Mm-hmm. But like the lower half with the boots and the like tighter leggings, that's very much more like a knight. Because the samurai actually had bigger, like wider pants. I forget what they're called, but it's like a trouser that was a little bit bigger, and then they would bind them with another. I don't know. It wasn't necessarily like a wrap. It was like a piece of cloth that they would wrap around their calves to make it tighter. But like the Jedi don't do that. They have just like trousers.
And the boots make
tucked
sense.
into boots.
From even like a knight's point of view, they're on horseback a lot more often. So if you get swiped with a knife,
Right.
a sword, the boot protects you. I used to ride horses, and I rode English discipline instead of Western discipline. So I had the full like blazer, breeches, and the big tall Chanel. They weren't Chanel. Good Lord.
But they looked fabulous.
But they were
I'm
Chanel
sure.
in spirit, yes. But they had the whole thing, and it also protected you from the oils of the horse. Because I remember I used to get patches of oil and hair on the insides of my calves from them, like, you know.
Yeah, I bet. Mm-hmm.
So, I'm glad they kept the boots. I think, and Obi-Wan looks fabulous in them.
Yeah, like what would a Jedi wear if not knee-high leather boots? It'd be badass.
No, I do wonder if did they have buckles to, like, keep them... Because you'd have to make sure the pants don't come out of the top.
Yeah, I think Qui-Gon is all buckles on his, all across the front. I'm trying to look. I can't really see it in the photo I have right now. And like Quinlan Vos, I think, has some buckles on.
If I recall correctly, just from memory, Anakin has a topper on top of his boot that is strapped on.
Mm-hmm.
It almost looks quilted, but it's like...
Yeah, it's like a spat.
Yeah, it's like a piece that goes... It's like an extra layer.
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah.
Recently I've been looking up cosplay options.
Oh, right. You're going on a trip.
Star Wars themes everywhere. And I was thinking, I should just go as my dream of being Anakin, like a female Anakin. And I was looking at the boots, and a lot of people have those two components of the boots. And I thought that was an interesting component. So when we were talking about this, Obi-Wan seems to have just, a one piece. But then Anakin had the two piece, like the extra layer, which I don't... Did he have trouble with his feet?
It's for kicking people in the balls.
What'd you say? What'd you say? Kicking people in the balls?
Yeah, it makes it more oomph.
I could see him doing it.
For him,
For
yeah.
him, yes.
I just made that up, but I think it's accurate.
It works. He's a tall dude. He wouldn't have to aim all that purposely. The knee is right there.
Protects his ankle while he does the kick.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I mean, all of the warriors back in the day, they rode horseback. So you have to have like a split tunic, or at least one that doesn't come below your waist.
Makes sense.
And that's why the tabard is split. It's a piece that comes over your shoulders in two parts, and it just runs down your chest. And that's because you have to spread your legs to sit on a horse. If you had like a solid piece, you wouldn't be able to sit very comfortably. Yeah, it's good. It's fun stuff. I don't know. I love this kind of stuff. And I'm also a big fan of historical stuff like knights and samurai and all that. So,
well, if you were to ask me, I think the progression of Obi-Wan's uniform as a Jedi is symbolic. And not accidental on the part of why he was so uptight and wrapped up by Revenge of the Sith, Mm-hmm. And I don't have an answer for what was going on in A New Hope, so... But you have to think of it in terms of, like, A New Hope was filmed first, so it was probably all very organic in the way that it unfolded, and then they had that to work with going forward. I'm sure George Lucas has all of the answers.
Yes, I'm sure he does. But, like, if you look at pictures of other costumes on Tatooine, Obi-Wan fits right in. So, and then after that, it progressed into the prequels and the clothes. So I think that maybe it wasn't so intentional at first in the sense. And like from what I understood too, when they did Return of the Jedi, and they show the Force ghosts at the end, and they show Anakin before they switched it out to be Hayden Christensen. They had the original actor in there. And from what I understand, they didn't have a costume. Like it was like a last minute decision to put that in there. And that was like the costume that fit him that was on set at the time. So they just put him in it, and it wasn't necessarily like a Jedi robe. It was like just what people wore in the Star Wars universe, because Yoda was kind of dressed that way as well.
Yeah, Yoda's got like just a winter jacket on.
Like a puffer jacket.
Like a puffer jacket, yeah. I think this whole thing's fascinating from a historical standpoint, as well as from a Jedi, Obi-Wan especially, because we know how his character progresses, and it doesn't get better. He's a wonderful character, but his path gets worse and worse. Not worse, just sadder.
It's sadder and sadder. Well, and if you incorporate Clone Wars into that costume design, and you see how at the beginning he's wearing armor, and by the end he has no armor left, it's like you could say that either it could represent that like his walls have come down, or more so that he has less and less to protect him. So by the end, He has no external protection, which is just kind of like what's happening with Revenge of the Sith. There's nothing left. It's at the end, it's just him versus Anakin, and whatever he brings with is all he's going to have for the rest of his life, you know?
And clearly, the sleeves didn't matter in that battle, because that is still my favorite lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars.
I'm sure they got in the way, and those are just the outtakes that we won't see.
Yeah. Yes, give us the outtakes.
Oh my God. Well, you've seen them trying to dress, and like they have a costume assistant pulling the sleeves up.
I mean, it's very, and like they have to, I think it's Hayden that bends back for the cloak because he can't quite, you know, he's super tall. But he can't maneuver in the damn costume as it is, and so they try and get the cape. You know, they're trying to make sure the hair remains the same, because there's all kinds of things that goes into all of that. They're always fluffing the hair.
So, wouldn't you? I want that job,
Listen,
hair fluffer.
I want to be an official hair adjuster for movie sets, for specific movie sets, okay? Specific actors. Hayden and Ewan, Sebastian Stan. Let me adjust their hair, please. Pretty please. Long-haired Sebastian Stan, please. I'll take short hair. I'm not a... Beggars can't be choosers, but you know what I mean. Professional hair adjuster.
I like it.
Call me up sometime. I'm free. No, I'm not. But I will be.
She will make time in her schedule for you.
I'll even wear an extra robe. Just to make everyone feel comfortable.
So now it's your turn, everybody listening. Would you like to wear Jedi robes? Is that your favorite Star Wars costume? Or do you have another favorite? We would love to hear what is your favorite Star Wars costume.
Yes, or what's your favorite Jedi's costume? There's plenty out there to choose from. Not all of them wore robes.
Yeah, there's a good variety out there. So hit us up on social media and tell us what you think.
Next week, join us because we're talking about something that is going to get really interesting and something I can't wait to dig into. And that is, we will be discussing the cave scene in Empire Strikes Back where Luke meets Vader / himself. Mm-hmm. And what is the symbolism behind everything that goes on in that cave.
Yeah, that's fun. It's deep.
It's deep.
I've looked into it a bit. It's pretty deep.
I love deep stuff. So come on into the cave with us. The last time we asked our listeners to chime in, it was all about self-care. And if you had any self-care Star Wars routines like Lauren and I did. And surprisingly, we got a lot of personal responses that were sent through direct messages and private messages on our social media. So we're going to keep those to ourselves because they were personal, but thank you so much for opening yourself up and being vulnerable. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's amazing some of the listeners we have that trust us to tell us these things. Some of the more public ones that we are able to read came from YouTube from our dear friend Jernan, who writes, "This was an amazing episode, guys." Well, thank you, Jernan. She says, "It means so much to know that we're not alone in how we find movies and stories and characters like this comforting. And this is a very personal topic for me, and I'm not going to get too deep, but Star Wars is such a comfort to me as well, especially the character of Obi-Wan, as I'm sure you both already know." And we definitely already know, and we definitely agree with you, girl. She says, "Obi-Wan is just so strong and positive, especially in the darkest of times. And really, truly, that is one of the more inspiring things. We have these characters that inspire us to do good and be good and persevere, right? And Obi-Wan is definitely one of those characters." MH also says, "When it comes to self-care in Star Wars, I always head straight to fair warning fix." She says her other fandom self-care things include reading Harry Potter, Sherlock, and watching Warrior Cat AMVs, because that book series was my late elementary, early middle school life. And MH, I know for a fact, like, I completely agree, because some of the greatest, most comforting things come from the past, and some of our formative years things, like, you know, my thing was Northern Exposure, right? And I totally get it. And Yav Yav says, "Hello, Space Twins." Hello, Yav Yav. She says, "My comfort Star Wars is the Lurkin, and the first Mandalore arc was Satine and Kenobi. And I dream of an alternate timeline where Mandalore has an ex-Jedi. And I think by that, if you mean the ex-Jedi being Obi-Wan, so he can be with Satine, then yeah, that is a comforting thought indeed. Happiness, the happy ending that our dear Obi-Wan deserved, right? Thank you again to everyone who chimed in, and we love our listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the Most Things Kenobi podcast. Remember to follow us on Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Plus, you can always find us over at mostthingskenobi.com.
So until next time, my space twin, may the Force be with you.
Always.